My name is Ted Anderson. I am an officer and a director of the North Sea Community, of the North Sea Maritime Center. And this is a joint program with the Peconic Land Trust. We're very excited. This is the first opportunity that we've had to work with the Peconic Land Trust. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with Kathy Kennedy at Peconic Land Trust to put together tonight's presentation. Before the Hamptons was the Hamptons, it was a farming community on the east end of Long Island. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Tonight's program is From Plow to Peconic, Farming's Role in Shaping North Sea, Southampton. Before we get started, I'll just tell you a little bit about our organizations. The North Sea the North Sea Maritime Center is a non-for-profit that was dedicated for the first-class restoration of the Tupper Boathouse here on Conscience Point. We're very excited because Thursday of this week we are going to break ground on the start of that restoration. So we couldn't be more excited. Then maybe next time when I see you folks, we'll be in that building rather than this one. The Peconic Land Trust conserves Long Island's working farms, natural lands, and heritage for our communities now and in the future. It's also a 501c3 non-for-profit. The trust offers 60 activities and programs like this one, highlighting the organization's conservation work, as well as the work of many local environmental partners. For those of you that don't know what the Peconic Land Trust is, one of our speakers, two of our speakers today actually now that are founders of the Peconic Land Trust, and you'll learn a little bit more about how that organization has continued the farming culture out here over the last few decades. We have a number of our directors here today. Mark Matthews, our president, is here. Connie Clayman, our treasurer, is here. Sheila Comparetto is responsible for our refreshments. Thank you, Sheila. Bruce Milliken has been at the door as well. So hello to all of you. I see many of our friends from past meetings here today. I see many of our donors here. Thank you so much for showing up to tonight's event. So tonight's format, we're going to hear first from Julie Greene, the Southampton town historian, that's going to give us just a brief recap of the history of the ag business here in North Sea and in Southampton. Then we're going to have a panel discussion about these generational farmers and these generation farming families that are going to talk about their recollections of farming and maybe some of the issues that are facing the farming community today. So with all that being stated, and by the way, once we start the panel discussion, if you have questions or anything like that, I encourage you to do it. We've got a lot of years of wisdom here. I'm not going to talk about how old anybody is, but we've got a lot.
I missed that one.
A lot of wisdom here. All right, so let me introduce you to Julie Greene. Julie Greene is the town of Southampton historian. She is a prominent figure in preserving the East End's heritage. She actively documents local landmarks, researches 17th century boundary marker trees, and leads educational workshops on researching historic properties and uncovering the region's complex histories. She serves on the Southampton Landmark and Historic District Board and chairs the Historic Burying Ground Committee. And she has lectured to us in the past. 2 years ago, she gave us a lecture on the history of North Sea. Ladies and gentlemen, Julie Greene.
Ted. Good evening, everybody. I thought I would begin with an excerpt, historical sketch, speech that was given by Judge Henry Hedges of Bridgehampton in 1885. So bear with me. The language is a little bit different, and I speak very fast, so I need to slow down. So grass was cut with a scythe, raked by a hand raked, pitched by an old, heavy iron fork. Grain was reaped with a sickle, thrashed with the flail, and winnowed with a riddle. Land was plowed with a heavy wooden frame plow, pointed with wrought iron. Harrows were mostly made with wooden teeth. Corn hills were dug with the hoe. Manure for the hill was dropped in heaps, carried to the hill by hand in a basket. Threshing lasted well into the winter, and then out came the crackle and swiggle, knife and board. The flax was dressed, wool carded, and the wheel sung to the linen, and the woolen spun in every house. The loom's dreary pound gave evidence that home manufacture clad the household. From his feet to his head, the farmer stood investment, produced in his own farm. The leather of his shoes came from the hides of his own cattle. The linen and the woolen that he wore were products from his farm that he raised. The farmer's wife or daughter braided and sewed the straw hat on his head. His fur cap, which he wore in winter, were made from the skin of a fox that he shot. Feathers of wild fowl in the bed whereon he rested his weary frame by night were the results acquired in his shooting. Hedges goes on to say that the farmer made every tool in the shed, from ox yoke to axe and hoe. All day he labored in the fields. As Hedges put it, the life of the farmer was literally a battle against the forces of nature for little more than the actual necessities of subsistence and with the most rude and unwieldy supply of weapons for the war. The monotony of his life was relieved by hunting and fishing in season, oysters, clams, eels, and other fish with game of the forest or fowl of the air helped out the supply of food. So thank you, Henry. Now I'll add a little something. The Native American tribes, the Sabonics and the Shinnecox, cultivated the land, growing corn, beans, and squash, while harvesting shellfish in the Peconic well before the English even settled here in Southampton in 1640. Evolving from indigenous crops, colonial farms relied on fertile soil from the glacial remains and the temperate climate to support and sustain crops and livestock. For the first 150 years of Southampton, farm life went practically unchanged. But by 1840, 1850, the United States Federal Census got in the game, and they began enumerating farmland and production throughout the country, and Southampton's agricultural contribution was counted. At the time, in 1850, there were over 20,000 acres were in rotation here in Southampton, producing bushels of wheat, oat, Indian corn, as it was called on the census, and some rye. Horses, milch cows, sheep, working oxen, and swine were the livestock on these farms. In North Sea, since we're in North Sea, which I hope you all know, was granted to John Ogden and a company of men back in 1650. Sheep were the most plentiful in 1850, with big fresh ponds, proximity for cleaning the fleece. There were sheep pens that they would build into the water, and they allowed all the sheep to go in and they would clean the fleece. So North Sea's wool was produced in the highest volume in comparison to the rest of the town. So there were a lot of sheep here in North Sea. Sticking to North Sea, David Rose, whose home is still standing on Noyak Road down by Woolly Pond, he grew hops, perhaps in the tradition of the bustling colonial seaport that was here at the North Sea Tavern, the site of a meeting to settle the famous East Hampton-Southampton 17th century boundary dispute. That was right here in North Sea settled. Interesting to note that only 6 farms had orchards that produced enough fruit to be sold. John Osborne, who owned an extensive farm just down the road in Noyak, had an orchard that produced $100 worth of product, the most on record for the time. Did I mention potatoes? Or rather Irish potatoes, as they're called on the census. As the population grew and the Long Island Railroad reached out here in 1870, Southampton and the rest of the East End became a massive commercial supplier for New York City, changing subsistence and trade farming to an industry. With the inevitable development changes that came to the area's agriculture, particularly when it comes to vineyards and open space and farmland preservation, things have changed. But just like the industrious farmers of 1640, 1650 who toiled the land, we thank those who continue to farm, and we support the next generation of Southampton farmers. So thank you all very much, and now I will leave it to
Thank you, Julie. So let me introduce our panel first, and then we'll ask them some questions. Richie King, to my left, is a third-generation farmer and the owner of North Sea Farms here on Noyak Road. You drive by it, for many of us, every day. The house and the property is over 150 years old. Richie is a member of the Southampton High School class of 1970, and I know that John Halsey was at Southampton School.
We're both the same. No.
Richie is a 45-year member of the North Sea Fire Department, a former trustee of the Southampton School Board of Education, a member of the Peconic Lodge. For 20 years, he served as a youth minister for First Presbyterian. He's also a founding member of the Peconic Land Trust. Please welcome Richie. To his left is one of our John Halseys. In the 1640s, and I see some Halseys here in the audience, in the 1640s, the Halsey family began farming in the watermill Bridgehampton area known as Mecox, named for the beautiful Mecox Bay. Today, the owners and founders of the Pail Farm, Market, and U-Pick, John and Evelyn Halsey, along with their daughter, Jennifer, are the 11th and 12th generation of Halseys carrying on a farming tradition that began more than 350 years ago. John started the Milk Pail in 1969, and at that time, he is one of the first farmers in the region to convert from wholesale farming to retail farming, which is a big deal. Please meet John Halsey. To his left is another John Halsey, John V.H. Halsey. John is the founder and president of the Peconic Land Trust. In the early 1980s, he founded it with Richie and one of my cousins, Terry Stabelic, and some other folks. He founded the Peconic Land Trust while he was on vacation from the West Coast and saw a for sale sign on the farm next door, which was a 10th generation farm. It was soon to be developed because of the necessity of paying estate taxes. In the 1970s, the value of land on eastern Long Island exponentially increased. Farm families for generations were unable to pass down the land within the family, and the children and grandchildren were now being forced to sell in order to satisfy the tax. John started the Peconic Land Trust in 1983 with Terry Stabelic, Richie King, Roy Wines, and Edward Sharretts. Did I have that correct? And since then, he and his team have worked with many farmers, families, and individuals to conserve over 14,000 acres of working farms, natural lands, and the community heritage that we all cherish across Long Island. He has degrees from Dartmouth College, Stockholm University, and Cal Berkeley. Meet John V.H. Halsey. So, first question goes to Richie. Richie, why don't you just tell us the story that you, as you understand it, about your family and your farm?
Wow. So 300 years after John's farm, my grandfather saw the North Sea Farms as it is today for sale. He called my dad, who was in the service, and my dad, buy it. He always would say, buy it, do it. So we did. And I guess there were potatoes early because they would pick potatoes by hand, and my uncle started calling my father Tater. It got shortened to Tate, and then it became a cookie. And that's kind of how that went down, which ended up being more valuable than the rest of the stuff. So it's a dairy farm, poultry farm. The pictures are in the back. Every kindergarten bussed their kids over back in the day for tours. So we had cows up until 1974 or 5. There were about 13 farms in the early 70s, but everything, land got too valuable, as Ted mentioned. So we turned the cow barn into a chicken coop, and it was a good idea for the moment, but a bad idea, and because it just was so hard to clean. And we had enough young labor. I brought a picture of my cousin Sean. Deanna's here. She worked there. We hired a lot of high school kids, my dad, and they stayed there. And so we did a lot of shoveling. A lot of shoveling. We don't do much anymore. It was quite a bit. So the chickens, and in early 70s, Ray Halsey from the Green Thumb encouraged my dad to start with the vegetables. So we began that process, and it was call about open air. It was open, all right. The roof leaked, everything. But we started it. So one day my dad's in Florida, 1 year, I should say, and Tommy White and a bunch of the farmers around here all came by. We tore it down and put a new one up before he got back. And it's the one that exists today. And it's been renovated and created. And, we had a dirt floor, we had to put a cement floor, long story short. But it evolved, and slowly but surely we became a vegetable farm, and now we have the chickens, 1,000 turkeys. It was an add-on as we went along. Another labor job, but okay, better than shoveling. So it's a chicken, egg, and then we grow tomatoes, lettuce, and melons, and odds and ends. And then a lot of stuff we bring in from local people, and they buy from us also. So that's how it evolved. We had pigs back in the day. We had sheep. We had goats. Kathleen had the goats. And but the pigs would get loose. Now, think about this today. They ran across Noyak Road. We chased them back, and no car ever came. Today, they'd all be dead. Because nobody would stop. And then the inspectors came along, and we were selling the sausage. And they said it has to be inspected, the yapping. And basically, really, they had pigs all over East Hampton, in the woods, and everybody had them. So enough of that, and they got rid of it. Once everybody had to inspect, that was the end of it. So there's certain ways to get again, land's so valuable, and houses were creeping up. So now I call the place a zoo because we have woodchuck, fox, hawk, it's eagle one day. They eat everything. The woodchuck is eating the cucumbers, fox likes the chicken, the hawk. Yeah, it's become but they have nowhere to go. Everybody who's been here knows how this area has grown. So we went from the dairy to the eggs. We still have the eggs. One poor little kid's riding down the bike. He just bought raw milk. The inspector saw him, stopped the kid, took his milk away, and came back to my father, which was not a smart move. He was so angry. 25 years later, he's leading a CPR class. And he came up to me and he whispered, "How's your father?" I said, "He's fine." Oh, yeah, so that was how it was. And now Ludlow has the dairy with the raw milk and the cheese. So it evolved back to, because I grew up on raw milk, and then everybody said it was bad for you. But no. Anyway, that was great. We used to make ice cream for ourselves, of course. Right? We made chocolate chip by accident. I was trying to make chocolate. It became chocolate chip. I don't know how. But
I was like, oh, chocolate chip.
yeah, and then we could never do it again. But we were lucky to have so many. My cousins worked every summer. We used to ride the truck with bags of corn on there, and everybody riding down the road. You do it today, you know what happens. Pulled over instantly. But a lot of guys in the back of the truck. We go to the Green Thumb and pick stuff from them and then sell it. And Deanna managed the store for a few of her high school years. Many, I should say. But that's how it would work. And then she would graduate, another kid would come in, and then they would run it. And same thing with the field work. A lot of the kids, some of them are still around. But they have good stories to tell. And they would be great with that. So that's where we are today. Still hiring kids from high school. One girl started at 14, and she's still there. And she's almost 40. So I guess she likes her job. And so she does great. And then there's a few others. So and that's what makes it go. The hardest thing is field labor now. But we can get to that another question.
Okay.
That's an open. I could talk all night. You go ahead.
So, John Halsey to Richie's left. Tell us your family farming experience.
I'm chuckling because you mentioned this is a non-for-profit organization. It would not be hard to find a potato farmer who would say, "Yeah, that's what we are."
That's what it is. That's the truth.
I'm a little younger than Richie, but at any rate, I have to be careful because I get going on discussing what we've done or what we're doing, and I get overboard and talk way too much. And my example I always use is a person came to me and was talking about apples. And oh boy, I like growing apples now, and I'll come to that. And he said, "Well, when do apples bloom?" 20 minutes later, all he wanted to know was in the spring. So, turn me off. Don't hesitate. I was born 1943 into a commercial potato farm. My dad started growing potatoes in the 20s, and I was interested in hearing the 1870 date. I always knew it was the railroad that made the difference.
I brought it with me so you could look it up.
And that's what really started going. And he is also the first generation that commercially farmed. If mom needed a new coat, he'd sell some potatoes and go buy a coat. It wasn't mom having to knit or sew or make shoes. So the last generation that was sort of self-sufficient was my grandfather.
Is that Everett?
Everett. No,
No, who was
Lawrence.
Lawrence? Who was
Adam, keep us straight here now. I grew up in my father's back pocket. I couldn't get enough of being in the farm, in the soil. Only back then it was dirt. Since I've learned it's soil. I just wanted to be with him. If we show these little video here, I'm in it, 6 years old, in amongst the crowd. I came home from 2 years of college. I didn't even want to go, but mom made us go. An interesting little tidbit maybe, my father was respected as one of the more advanced and successful potato farmers. He did not finish high school. My mother got her degree in Russell Sage College and then master's in teaching from Cornell. Now, do you suppose there was a difference in the belief of education between those two? And I can't help but think that at some point there may have even been a little friction. But there was no question. The four of us were going to go to college. I didn't want to go, but they made sure I went. But I went 2 years, came home, and started my dairy. I wanted to milk cows. So I had a dairy, milk cows for 9 years. 9 years. It took that long, beating my head against the wall, to realize that I was making a mistake that a number of people told me I was doing ahead of time. But it sure taught me how to work. And from there, we went on growing apples. Married in 1969. On our honeymoon, Evelyn was talking about, well, we had other things we talked about, but she was working in Bridgehampton Bank and would much rather be outside. She's not an inside girl. Why don't we start a retail store? So came home, started, there was a little building for rent. It wasn't when we left on our honeymoon. So we rented it, started the milk pail selling dairy products that we got back from Schwenk's Dairy, who processed our milk. Then in the fall, we drove to Vermont, where her parents had moved and were growing apples. It's strange, but out here, and I was interested to hear you, Julie, say there was very few apples or orchards. I had never had a good apple. And we bought 75 bushels from her father. He drove his truck from Shoreham, Vermont to New Paltz, exit on a thruway. I borrowed a truck and drove to the exit. We swapped the 75 bushels, and I got home in time to milk the cows. So, and all the way home, I kept saying to Evelyn, I sure hope you like applesauce. There is no way in hell are we going to sell all these apples. 2 weeks later, we were going back for another load. The right place at the right time. Then we just kept going there. My dad died, and he and my brother Tom were growing 100 acres of potatoes still. They had 30 acres, Tom 70. They worked together planting and harvesting. And when Dad died, I asked Tom what do you think the two of us could work together, and I'll just keep doing the 30 and we'll keep growing. And we did. at some point, I think it could be said that it took the time between planting and harvest for us to get talking again, but we got along great. And he gave up potatoes 2 years later. I did 1987 with my last crop. By then, we had quite a bunch of apples growing. And so apples and cider, the milk pail, and here we are. It's much better for you folks to ask questions about what's on your mind.
Do you want to show that?
That's whatever the,
We're gonna show, you're gonna show your video here.
well,
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna call you John B.H., okay?
Sure.
All right. John, why don't you tell your interesting angle on your farming experience and what the Peconic Land Trust, why it came to existence and what it's doing.
Okay, well, I will tell you a little history of my family. My family made the long journey, probably the fourth or fifth generation from Southampton to Bridgehampton, and ended up not actually too far from John and Evelyn's farm, and of course Jen as well, but many decades, if not a century or so beforehand. So my family, all of our families were subsistence farmers to begin with. It was all about survival. So going back really to I guess my great-grandfather would be the last in my family that had a bona fide farm. But he was also a doctor. And my family had lots of professionals in them. Lawyers and doctors, really going back to my great-grandfather, who built a house, married a Mitchell, so Mitchell Lane, you're all familiar with, so that family, and built a house. It's called the Heritage. It's right, very close to Butter Lane, and right across from Cinderella. There was a Greek revival house there, so that's still in our family. But that goes back to my great-grandfather. So all these attorneys, all these doctors along the way. There's a picture on the back that shows my great-grandfather and his two sons and daughter. They were both doctors. He was an attorney. And my Aunt Kit, who was alive when I was a young person, was born before the Civil War. I remember meeting her. She was sharp as a whip. She was college educated, never married, and the family lore is she couldn't find a man smart enough.
Here.
that could be a problem.
So anyway, that still remains in our family. So there is a tradition of agriculture in my blood. It's just that our family got into, the professions. My dad was a doctor. He probably delivered somebody in this room. I wouldn't be surprised. There's a couple. So that's sort of the difference in our family and how it branched out into the professions. I am neither a doctor or an attorney, and that was by choice. Certainly, my dad encouraged me to take pre-med, and I said no way. So I didn't want that. I didn't want to follow in those footsteps. So I've made my own journey. And so growing up here, I worked. My first job was working for Charlton Halsey. So 14 years old, I got my working papers. And I was carrying irrigation pipe across potato fields. And then when we weren't doing that, we were doing all kinds of things indoors. So if it was raining, we were painting, doing rudimentary plumbing. I shingled a water tower. I learned so much from Charlton in those at least three, maybe 4 summers of working on that farm. I developed a tremendous respect for the ingenuity, the independence of farmers. Just dealing with day-to-day crises, knowing how to weld out in the field, just doing everything and dealing with anything that came up, and I really benefited from seeing that ethic, that work ethic, and that love of the land, the attachment that he had to that land, so that really shaped my interest in agriculture and respect for farmers. So when I did come back in 1980, visiting a family and friends, and the for sale sign was on the farm next door, which was my playground, the best playground of all. Making forts in fields of rye, being a pain in the neck behind the potato digger. In the barns, that farm I knew as well as the family who owned it. That was the Downs family. And in 1980, there was this for sale sign. And I knew the family, obviously, very well. And they were faced with a $2.2 million federal inheritance tax. And they didn't have that in the bank. It was all in the land. And unfortunately, they had so much distrust of government. They felt that government had really put them in this position that I couldn't convince them to look at the sale of development rights as an option. But it actually was almost too late at that point. I think they were already in contract with a developer to purchase the main farm. And they really were poorly advised because they got into a sales agreement that was contingent upon subdivision approval. That took 5 years, and there was penalties on top of and the interest on top of the 2.2 million. And by the time they sold it for 4.1, they had a 47% penalty on top of it. So after 10 generations, next to nothing, next to nothing. And I remember getting off the phone after that first call and talking to my dad. I said, "This is crazy." He says, "Well, it's happened to the Fay farm near where John and Evelyn live." And he listed a couple of other farms, and there didn't seem to be an organization focused on working with landowners and farmers in particular to give them options that, even though they were government inspired, like the purchase of development rights, this is the first place in the country that the idea of development rights, the purchase of development rights on farmland began. And it actually didn't come completely from the government. I think Tom was at the first meeting at the county executive John Klein held in the 70s to invite farmers from throughout Long Island to talk about how to protect agriculture. And he said to them, gather together, Suffolk County wants to buy your farm. And the farmer said, "Are you kidding? You want us to sell our farms to you?" "Yes, we'll rent them back. We'll rent them back, and then you don't have to worry about taxes and so forth." And they walked out. They walked out of that meeting. And that was not their idea of how to work with government. But they came back. It's my understanding that the farmers realized that there had to be something they could sell other than the land. And that the actual idea to sell the right to develop the land was originated with the farmers, many of whom had met with the county executive. And so together then they crafted this program, the first of its kind in the country, as a way for farmers to access the equity tied up in their land, especially in this period of rapid appreciation. So we came along to really help facilitate planning with landowners, giving them options, not only public options, but also private options. The ability to donate land or conservation easements in conjunction with sales of development rights to public partners like the county and later the towns. And so a lot of our work is really founded on working with landowners to understand the needs, goals, and circumstances that they're facing. And then understanding the land that they own. And recognizing that all land doesn't have to be protected. And that within a boundary line of land, there's land that is really important to preserve. It's the best farmland. There's land that would be nice to preserve if they can afford to do it. But there's also land that's available for development, for their own equity in the future, for their kids to have a place to live, for their retirement. So never an all or nothing proposition, but coming up with a strategy for each family that is unique to the land and the circumstances that they have. And so then coming up with a plan and then implementing that plan, helping them get through the planning boards or whatever, dealing with the county, and really helping implement that plan. And then the trust being in a position for land that was given to us, or land that we held development rights on, the stewardship responsibility to ensure that land that is protected remains protected, and that land that we own has a public benefit. So that gets us into the whole realm of working with new farmers today. So we have a Farms for the Future initiative to help new farmers, whether they're from a new generation of local growers or people who are new to the area and want to learn to farm and need some land to get started. So that's another aspect of the work that we do. So it all comes down, though, to that connection that I think all of us have, all of us in this room have, that living in this place where we have the ocean and bays and seafood and shellfish and the bounty of the land that our growers provide us with. And just that love of land is really what is inspiration behind the Peconic Land Trust and why we continue to do the work that we do.
Yes, sir.
John, everything you said is absolutely true, but he's much too modest. The reason the Development Right program worked was because John, unlike a politician, knew how to talk farmer. There isn't a farmer around that I know of that is comfortable going into the town hall. And most of them won't go there unless it's in a box. But John would know how to sit down and talk about farming and then, oh, by the way. So that's the key to this whole thing, I believe. So whoever, no one will take your place, but that's the theme to save farmland. First talk to the farmer and he does it well.
So I'd like to follow up on something that John B.H. said, and that he talked about kind of the upside of farming. I'd like for our farmers here to tell us the downside of farming and the upside of farming in their careers. John?
Who, me?
Yes,
You'll have a hard time. I gotta be careful now. I've said at least 14,000 times that every farmer has a crying gene. They're born with it. It's right in there. I could have the most fantastic crop of apples that I've ever grown, and yeah, but I could have had more if, doggone it, the market just turned south and I'm making money hand over fist, but I still could cry about it. So you always have to weigh the downside coming out of a farmer's mouth, me included. I'm not talking about anybody else. But from my perspective right now, having to work with the next generation, the downside of farming is government and regulations. It keeps going and going and going. Okay, now I've cried about that. Well, guess what? My father said, I'm damn glad I don't have to raise kids and farm in this generation. So it's there all the time. Jennifer is handling it. Adam is here. His boys, girls are handling it. But it's not easy. And with the current state of administration and government, the labor issue is a major concern from the standpoint of getting the work done, but from the standpoint of helping families, it's a real problem. The upside of farming is it's a lot of fun. I was asked at one point, did you ever have any education? And I said, no, not really. I'm not very smart. He said, well, you a damn fool. Why don't you sell some of this land? Look at all the money you could have. And I said, yeah, I could. Well, you could have a nice car, and you could get a bigger house. Why don't you sell some of this? And I said, well, first of all, I have a nice car. If I get a bigger house, my wife will leave me because she promised she's only going to clean 2 bathrooms. And besides, the last time I looked at the Wall Street Journal, nothing was increasing in value as much as land. And so that's why I don't sell. But deep down, the reason I didn't sell, I don't own any now, was it's the land that keeps us all going. And my father, my grandfather, and brother have worked on this land, and if you take care of the farm, it takes care of you, and it has, just over and over again. So it's a different feeling. I believe firmly that farmers are born. You don't have to be born into a farm family, but there's something in our head that makes us want to continue doing it. That may be the reason we have such a hard head too, but that's the upside of farming, just the satisfaction. And now that we're more retail and we sell orchard pick, you pick, and seeing folks come in and not having a clue how that apple got on that tree. Folks, most of our people around now would be pretty helpless if they had to start growing things. So it's fun to teach. And I had one experience, the Ross School, we have worked with them for a long time with apples and cider now, and we give tours. They said, can we bring a tour from our branch in the Bronx? Oh, sure. So they come on down, and the bus door opens, and 3 or 4 little kids start down the steps, and they stop. And I said, oh boy, who yelled at them? But then finally one of them got brave, got to the bottom step, and put his foot down. They had never seen grass. And when they got out in the grass and were running around, you would have thought they were a bunch of little puppies. They just couldn't stop it. It was just so phenomenal. So I wouldn't have had that experience had we not had a farm. Excuse me. I talk too much.
Richie, how about you? What's the downside of farming? What's the upside?
What was that?
Upside.
It's, well, John said just about anything as far as regulations and help, so I won't go there. But growing up on a farm, you're free. You're free to pick and choose your battles. How hard do you want to work? What do you want to produce? You meet a lot of great people. I mean, we had kids, like I said before, but getting to know everybody's family was a big deal for me. And the fun, we had a lot of fun. The stories are still told over and over. Things aren't quite the same because of regulations and traffic and all that. But my dad worked his butt off to keep that place there. So it's an incentive to, okay, we got this far. I was telling Adam on the way, and I don't think I have one building left that was there originally. You know, because everything was geared to chickens, and as Donald Oliver said, the chickens are holding the roof up. You know, so they were in bad shape, and so everything's moving along. One day I had too much chicken. I said, well, let me make chicken sausage just to see how it goes. It's the biggest seller I have. How many hundreds of pounds do you use, Sean, in the deli? 60. So something like that, you get creative. You say, I got to do something with this chicken. And that's what we did. And it turned out to be great. So it's always that, and it's ever evolving practice. There's less and less of us here farming, but we all have to get along. We need each other, one way or the other. So you have that camaraderie. I used to grow 50 acres of corn, and all the land became a house, and so now I have to buy the corn, and that's just the way it is. So we only have the 10 acres. Like I said, we're 300 years behind you, John. So it's hard for me to catch up.
You're doing
But
just fine.
It's fine. It's fine the way it is, yes.
Yeah.
And I got to work at Agway, and I met potato farmers that I really didn't know back in the day. And that was an experience. That was a lot of potato farmers. That was the Temic era. And the Temic's the greatest thing ever. Well, we're still crying about Temic. So that's just how things go in the industry. No, none of my children seem interested. So I don't have the challenge. I have is what in the world am I going to do? Find the fountain of youth, or
To what extent were the potato farmers using DDT?
was that DDT?
Yeah,
That-
were they using DDT?
Yeah, that was
Potato farming?
even before Temic.
Right.
So
That was World War II era.
yeah, that was quite a while. Yeah,
It was used
it was
on
used.
the troops in World War II to kill the lice.
So a lot of those things are gone, and luckily so. So we're adjusting to the sprays with a lot of integrated pest management, counting and watching, trying not to spray much. I use all plastic because weed killers, I find that you use them, but they don't always work the way you want. So that's what we've been doing. So we keep evolving each year, and you never know what's going to happen. The weather changes. You have no control.
If you can't blame it on anything else,
Blame it on the
weather.
I had to bring that one up.
Yeah, absolutely. Not you, everybody.
The only downside is the long days, but I don't know. It keeps me healthy, so I won't complain. It's just the way it is. And as long as you have good help, which is hard to get.
So following up on something you said, Richie, what do you think the future is for farming out here in North Sea?
The agribusiness entertainment piece has taken hold, but it works for some. Everything will evolve. The farm stands are still needed. I mean, we see what's going on with the food. So people ask 1,000 questions, but we grow the lettuce. We don't spray the lettuce. Everybody's happy to hear they buy the lettuce. So farmers are always going to be needed in the vegetable world, the apple world, because society, there's a demand still. I mean, the change here, it might be a lot more Uber or that type of thing where you grab and go food and deliver, because nobody wants to drive. It's crazy out here. You all know that. I'm not speaking of school, but I drive that tractor down the road. I pray I don't get hit. I mean, they come so close. So is the future? Yeah, there's still a future. There'll always be a future. There'll be a demand for quality, and so it's why with the 10 acres, we focus on the eggs and the chickens and a little bit of vegetables, all they can possibly grow, and we'll see. We don't give up, but maybe one of my kids will get bored and come home. No.
John, what do you think the future is?
Which one?
John, you're John BH, he's John. How about that?
Future's great. Anybody that doesn't believe in the future had just better go back home somewhere. Is the future in agriculture the way we're doing it right now?
Might change.
Bright? Probably for a while. I really have been thinking a lot about this because Will is my grandson. He's 17. When he was 4 years old, had him help me hook up a piece of equipment. and he couldn't, his job was to drop the pin in. Well, he couldn't get it in, 4 years old. So I shut everything down. I said, Will, I'm going to show you a little trick. So I showed him a little trick, and the pin dropped in. He turned around, he looked up at me, and he said, Grandpa, you got to teach me all your little tricks. And after I got up off the floor out of the puddle of goo I fell in, I said, that kid wants to farm. There was no question. And that's exactly what he's done all along. Adam's the same way. We have the next generation. Will's headed off to Cornell in a couple of weeks. Will the farm be there when he comes back? Yes, I think it will. But my suspicion is there'll be a lot more technology keeping it going. There'll have to be some adjustments to dealing with way more people and all on a retail basis. Now, will environmental groups get tough enough that it'll make it impossible to grow a crop? I don't think so, but it's possible. Will crop protectants become less available because there's so little farming here, the major companies won't register a new product? They don't make any money on it, they're not going to register a product, so we won't have newer advances. These are all possibilities. That's what, well, I'm one of these people that worry about the day when I don't have anything to worry about. I say, God, but these are things that we think about, but I think the future is really bright. It's a tremendous market. And it's rare, I don't know about others, but it's rare that there's ever a question on price. So, I think we shoot ourselves in the foot. I know Evelyn and I have with the quality of apples. If we don't have the very prime apple out, people will pick up on it. This one's got a little mark on it. So, okay, if you want perfect, get plastic. But can raise the price to get there too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm optimistic, always have been.
John B.H., what do you think is the future for farming out here?
Well, absolutely, there's the future, and because we thrive on food, we need food, and if we have the land protected for that purpose, we'll have people who will farm on that land. But that is a big challenge, because here on the South Fork, the value of protected farmland is as much as $300,000 an acre. And why is it that high? And that's because there are non-farmers who can buy it. There's no limitation on them to buy it for a hobby horse farm, or just to own it.
Big
And
backyard.
not have a farm next to them because they don't want to have a farm next to them. So that's a huge problem, because how does a food production farmer compete in a market where the value of protected farmland? So no development rights on this land, $300,000 an acre. So there are ways, and just like a farmer has to be inventive, so does the Peconic Land Trust, and we've come up with a new additional restriction that the town is purchasing on farmland. Sometimes these additional restrictions are given to us to limit the use of farmland to food production, to have an affirmative requirement to farm it, to have a cap on its appreciation so that when a farmer wants to sell it in the future, it's still affordable to a food production farmer. It must be sold to a qualified farmer as well. So that brings the value down on protected farmland to about $26,000 an acre, with a maximum 3.5% appreciation. It's actually limited to CPI, Consumer Price Index, or AMI, Area Median Income, whichever is less, not to exceed 3.5%. So again, to keep that land affordable for future generations of food producers. It's just a fraction, though, of the farmland that is protected that is subject to these additional restrictions. I'm guessing about 300 acres in Southampton Town. Southampton Town, using its community preservation money, which we don't get, just in case anyone's confused, that goes to the town. We're a private conservation organization, depending on private contributions to do our work. There's a lot of confusion about that, by the way. That money, though, that the town has, and their basically agreement to use CPF money to buy these enhanced rights is really critical to the future of agriculture, I think, to have enough supply of land that is available to future farmers. So that's a huge one.
Thank you.
I had just a general question. Thought about this for years. As there are fewer acres of farms, fewer families that I know farm, because very close to one. But I was always under the impression that there's a break-even point, and there's not enough support for the equipment, materials for the farmers to get what they need because there aren't enough acres in farming. Has that become more of a problem? The tractor supplies, all these things that you guys, you do it all, but you can't do it all. You still need to have service on your equipment. Has that become more of a problem?
Not yet.
It's right on the edge.
Right on the edge, yeah.
It isn't uncommon for growers to be shipping equipment to be repaired to Pennsylvania, bring it back, or Connecticut or somewhere, cost of doing business. I think the major concern, though, is as farm families get older, and if there is no one behind that wants to continue, then that production may wither. There's land right now that could be farmed that's not being farmed. There's no one to farm it. So the upside, downside, it's, yeah, I think that's true, but most of the farms are small compared to what the potato farms were.
Right. And of course, you're changing to apples, to different equipment level than potatoes, right?
We used a lot of the same, but yeah, I modified a lot myself. I think most growers do that. If they have a different need with a different crop, they'll work on modifying it.
I don't think everyone is quite as capable of modifying things as you are.
Oh, I don't know.
You gotta make the adjustments.
But maybe one of the answers is to go back to the day when I used to go to Cliff Foster's and he would repair every single piece of equipment. He had a machine shop that could build almost anything rather than ship it to Pennsylvania. And so maybe part of the answer is teaching the trades so that children of farmers or help of farmers can learn the mechanical trades, machine shop trades and so forth that would augment the farming movement.
That would be great. There's Frank Ruppel is a mechanic in Bridgehampton who took over after Ray Topping, or he worked for Ray.
Right.
Frank's in his 70s. My grandson Will has been working with him some. But as the equipment gets much more technical, it's going to take a different type of knowledge. It's fine to work on the old equipment that you grew up with, but I see some of the things that are being tried in research plots, and that's going to take a whole different skill set to work with.
But there are community colleges, Jones College out in the Midwest has a whole trade program now for young people. So there is hope.
That's what you need. You go back to the trades stuff.
And then we'll hire one of these folks to come in, but where are we going to put them to live?
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
We need help. Everybody needs help, but more and more it's got to be done in-house.
Bruce, you have a question?
Yeah, are you concerned about the supply of farmers? We're talking a lot about the land.
Am I,
About the farmers, the supply of farmers.
absolutely,
Next generation. And
absolutely. Yeah.
And that's why we have put such an emphasis on that, with land on both forks that we make available to people who are interested in agriculture. Some of them are second career people, and some of them, most of them, get a taste of it and they decide, I don't think this is
Yeah, there's
what
been a
I
few of
want
those.
to do, which is fine. What's interesting with the people that go through our incubator program, if they don't decide to farm, they get involved in some other aspect of agriculture, which is really interesting. We also have, a CSA farm, Quail Hill, out in Amagansett, where we have a whole apprenticeship program. And, there's some spectacular successes out of that program. And Amber Waves Farm, for those of you who are familiar with Katie and Amanda, they came, one from California, the other from Vermont, didn't know each other, spent 1 year at Quail Hill Farm, and they fell in love with agriculture. And then at the end of that year, they said, let's do this together. And so that's really the origins of Amber Waves, and they've been amazingly successful.
Yeah.
What's that?
They grow farmers.
Yes, they grow farmers too. So there are these opportunities out here, and it's surprising some of the people who move out of the city with more capital than many people who do come into the program have. But I think of Browder's Birds as another example.
Mm-hmm.
As a banker in the 2000s, he got really frustrated with the industry, and finally his wife said, well, let's get the heck out of here. You keep talking about you want to do something, let's go try it out. And so they rented from us, and ultimately we were able to sell them a piece of property that was affordable. The development rights have been sold to South Old Town. There's Eight Hands Farm. That's another family that moved out from the city. Again, they had more capital than most people, but that enabled them to buy another farm that we had protected and then sold to them. And I think their son is definitely committed to agriculture. That's the Geppel family on the North Fork. So then you've got the next generation farmers, from the families that have been here for many years. And so to me, I'm hopeful about that. I think there are so many challenges. If you just dwell on them, you wouldn't do anything. I mean, there's labor, there's equipment, there's so many things, but yet it's continuing. And as long as, again, there is the will and there's the land to farm, that it will continue to happen, because there is a demand, and it's an amazing market here.
Long Island is a history of change. You had a question, I'm sorry.
Well, sort of moving the topic in a slightly different direction. There's a very large piece of farmland on Deerfield Road where the signs just went up. You're not planting these trees.
Sikorsky's farm.
And I'm just wondering what the mechanics of that transaction look like to any of you.
Is that the one on the?
It's Sikorsky, but
Yeah.
Adam knows more about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a problem with, again, the value of
Right.
land. And again, the interests of the family, and we don't know. I don't certainly know the finances that are driving them to make the decisions. But that's protected farmland. But unfortunately, it could get picked up by someone who is not going to farm it. And there's nothing that we can do to force them to farm it. It can't be developed. Can't have houses on it. But that's one of the challenges that we have with the land. that has been protected 30 or 40 years ago through a purchase of development rights by the town or the county. Most of those restrictions don't require the land to be farmed because at the time those rights were acquired, no one could dream that someone would not want to farm it. It was always assumed when these programs began that the person who would end up owning it would be a farmer. But that's what's different on the South Fork. It's not as big a problem on the North Fork, interestingly enough, but that will change.
Yeah,
that will change.
fast over there.
Just another question I probably should know the answer to, but I do not, and that is isolated parcels that are just farm parcels, like this one at Deerfield, that have no barns or houses or anything like that. And John Halsey mentioned this problem, about housing, where's someone going to live?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for a farmer owner to build a house on such, and a barn on such property? Or is that not part of the formula yet?
Well, it sort of depends on the piece of land.
The
And-
easement.
And sometimes people leave out, when they sell their development rights, they will leave out an area, a development area that maybe is poorer land and is an appropriate place to have some housing. And sometimes, in the case of the Sikorsky piece, of course, there is a barn, and I think there's a small house on that parcel as well,
Yeah.
but it's not affordable to a farm family. So, that's again the challenge. The challenge that individual families and farmers face, and a challenge that as an organization trying to ensure a future for agriculture that we're trying to grapple with. I mean, let's face it, we as a community did not deal with affordable housing early enough. We should have been buying land for that purpose, not the best farmland, but the marginal land. That we should have been on top of that, but we weren't. The North Fork, though, being about 20 years behind us, they have a real opportunity to learn from our mistakes. Because now there is this community housing fund. Southold is putting money together, collecting that. It's 0.5%, just like the 2% that it collects for real estate transactions. So, they can learn from the errors that we have made. So it's a big challenge. It will continue to be, but at least it's started. We do have that fund, but the cost of land is the biggest impediment.
Why don't you look at that video and then you can see some real cheap land.
We're going to run the video. Everyone's going to have a chance to look at some of the pictures in the back. We've got some refreshments. I read somewhere, because I love kind of reading about the history out here, that in the winter times, a lot of the farmers did a lot of fishing. And I was wondering if that was an experience that any of you guys can share with your families.
Not me. I have gone fishing, but that's about it. not to make a living.
My dad fished a lot, but it was not his sole source of income. It was more of a hobby, but he net fished in Mecox Bay predominantly. I could go back further. He tells stories of when he was single, baiting codfish lines on the beach for those who went out in the surf with long lining codfish. This is back in the 20s, before that. But the fishing he did was with fikes and then ball seines, and then he did gill netting for bass, striped bass, when Mecox Bay was being managed properly, when the weather was correct, the striped bass would be flowing south. The bay got opened up, striped bass would come in, Dad would catch those. Just a very simple little little business, but I grew up with him hauling seine. He would cast the seine in the morning, and then by lunchtime I could come home from school and help him haul out, and then go back to school. But we had quite a deal going. He took 10% for the cost of the equipment, then we split the rest of the money we made on the fish we sold. And in 1959 and 60, I was making $1,500 a year fishing with him. And he did it because he really enjoyed it. It was his way of unwinding from the hecticness of growing potatoes. But there was money involved. But,
And I think that if you go back hundreds of years, the Native American population, Shinnecox, for example, were whalers at some point, and they were farmers as well, so that they maybe better understood ways to live off the land year-round.
And then, of course, you've got the whole shellfish
Yeah.
industry, and of course that was here again the bounty of this place, and again the ingenuity of people to focus on that aspect of growing. So one of the preserves that the trust has is it's our shellfisher preserve on Hog's Neck up in Southold, and that was an entrepreneur, the Plow family, the Shelter Island Oyster Company, who raised oysters and created a hatchery and a whole system to be able to raise shellfish year round, just out of the box thinking. And it's so there's a long tradition, whether it's fishing or it's shellfish growing, and of course growing vegetables and food in the fields. It's extraordinary. I mean, the diversity of what this place provides in terms of opportunity and benefits.
I actually fish for people. I'm pastor of a church in Cutchogue.
see that?
So I am fishing. It's my supplement.
Any other questions before we move on to the opportunity to just talk privately with our panelists and talk among ourselves? All right, well, how about a round of applause for We're going to play a video for you guys, and then we'll give you an opportunity to just mix and mingle.
This, I guess you call it a video. My mother took 16mm movies of our family and life, and she took them in 1949, a whole series of potato growing. Grandfather and Uncle Jesse cutting by hand. That would start in February. £125 bags of fertilizer. If you look carefully to the left of the fellow, there's a little blue suit. That's yours truly. That's how I was babysat. Just hung out on the truck. That's off Ocean Road. Ocean Road, Bridge Lane. Which one you got, Adam? That's my brother. No, there was a purpose. If the plow started to get plugged up, who was riding would use his foot to push the straw through. Did you know Jim Fay? Jim Fay? That's him on the column. Just to make clear, this farm has never used pesticides. We only use crop protectants. $0.10 a bushel they got paid. There I am again.
Were those migrant helpers?
Yep,
Yeah.
they weren't moving.
Thank you for our panelists again. It's really so wonderful to have you here, and we've got it on videotaped, so we can hopefully hold on it for the next generation as well. The North Sea Maritime Center has a sunset cruise tomorrow, 6 o'clock, leaves from the Tupper Boathouse, and then Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock at the Tupper Boathouse, we have yoga with Michelle Beebe. We encourage you to join us there. Otherwise, I'd like to thank the North Sea Community Schoolhouse for allowing us to use their premises here, and thank you again to the Peconic Land Trust for your participation in this. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.